Thank you for joining me again to meet and discuss a business continuity plan. The goal for today is to discuss with you the elements of a business continuity plan, how it impacts your business, and how you can create one so that in the event of a significant business disruption, you're able to continue operations and get back to business as quickly as possible. This is not really for a technical audience. It kind of is for techs, but also for leaders. So for leaders on the call, we're not going to bore you with a bunch of technical details. I want to start with this slide. This is Winston Churchill back during World War II showing the victory sign. And he was famously quoted as saying, the pessimist sees difficulty in every opportunity, where the optimist sees opportunity in every difficulty. The reason I bring that up is a lot of times we avoid business continuity plan or disaster recovery planning or planning for our own untimely exit because it's not pleasant. I think this is a great opportunity for all of us to think about things that we can do differently, do better to ensure our business, our staff, our clients, they are all taken care of in a time of disruption, whatever that may be. So that's what we're going to focus on today. What is a disaster? I really don't like to use the term disaster recovery, but I want to cover what I like to refer to as a significant business disruption, because it's not always a disaster we're talking about. A lot of times we're talking about things that are, significant challenges in your business, but luckily no one's dead. Life isn't lost, but it's a significant business disruption. So these things are events, frequently unexpected, that seriously disrupt your usual operations or processes and possibly could have long-term impacts on your normal way of life or that of your organization. So think of a significant business disruption. I'll give you some examples in a minute. Not always a natural disaster, not always a tornado or hurricane or fire. It could be any kind of event that seriously disrupts operations. We want to plan for those. So events that can cause a business continuity plan to be activated. These are the disruptions we're talking about. An example, extended loss of your primary location or a major location that you need to use all the time. I'm going to use my laser pointer here. Extended loss of or unavailability of key personnel required to deliver key functions. In my business, I've got, everybody here is important. We need everybody here. We're lucky in some areas to have some overlap. We've got multiple guys that can install, configure, and support a WatchGuard firewall. We have multiple guys that can install, configure, and support a backup or disaster recovery system. We have multiple guys that can install, configure, and support a Mitel cloud or on-site phone system. One of those guys is unavailable for a period of time, vacation, sick time, unplanned emergency. That can certainly cause delays, but it's not a significant impact. However, there are a few people don't have a lot of backup for. I'm one. Paul, service manager, Tangerine, finance manager. Those are people that would be a key person. So look at your own business and think about who those people are. Extended and significant interruption to critical supply chain goods and services. If you're in manufacturing or if you're in a business that requires a supply chain to do your business and that's not available to you, that could be a serious disruption. Lack of ability to receive UPS, FedEx is down, air control, air traffic is down. Those things can be an issue. Extended loss or unavailability of critical infrastructure for your operation. It could be power, telephone services. Maybe your critical infrastructure is your manufacturing ability. Maybe your critical infrastructure is a MRI machine or any other. If you're in an optical business at an eye shop, all the machines that test patients' eyes. Maybe that's your critical infrastructure. And then lastly, extended loss or unavailability of key information or vital documents, including electronic and data systems. Let's say you run a business that's in manufacturing or production and all your pricing information is missing. Or let's say you're at Vertex and all of our ticket information is gone. We can't see who called in, when they called. We can't see our customers' data. We can't see the last time we serviced them. If that was all missing, that would be a significant business disruption. Those are the things we want to plan for because they can have consequential impacts on our business. So continuity planning is a process to minimize the impact of these major disruptions to normal operations. We're not going to eliminate all impacts. We're going to minimize them. It's also a process to enable restoration of critical assets and restore normalcy as soon as possible. I'm going to talk about these words. I've used things like soon, significant disruption. Those are all subjective terms. We've got to look at our own business and see what's soon to us, what's significant to us. I want to make sure we talk about that, and I'm going to cover it in just a second. But what it is not is it's not just the recovery of IT. So I'm not going to focus solely on IT. We're also talking about restoring other things. And that's what business continuity is all about. A couple of terms we use in the IT side of continuity planning, but it also relates to business continuity, are recovery time objective, called RTO, and recovery point objective, called RPO. Recovery time is the point in time when you must have at least the critical aspects of your business operational again. So let's say I'm a medical practice and I see 500 patients a day, and talking to the leadership, looking at our patients' needs, looking at our business needs, we decide it's a significant business disruption if we're not able to see patients for a half a day or for a day. In that case, we'd say our recovery time objective is a half a day or a day. If we had an outage, we either have 4 hours to get back from it or 8 hours. That's very quick in a significant disruption world, but it's possible, I guess. Recovery point objective is more about your data. When is the last copy of your data that is out of harm's way? What I mean by that is, let's say you had a ransomware attack. A hacker penetrates your network somehow. User clicks a link they're not supposed to. They send information they're not supposed to. Your network is penetrated. They encrypt your data. You can't get access to it. When was the last copy of that data out of harm's way off network? Was it last night? Was it last week? That's the recovery point. So in the leadership circle, we always need to be talking about what our recovery time is and what our recovery point is. Here's why. There's frequently a disconnect between the leadership team or the IT people and the users and the managers. And the reason is that the leadership, let's say it's a medical practice and you've got 13 doctors in there. The doctors have talked about the criticality of information systems, the criticality of access to equipment, the criticality of access to the facility for patients to be seen. And in their mind, a half a day is a crisis. But your continuity plan is really designed to kick in the event of a major outage, a major disaster, which someone else in the organization thinks is 3 days. We got to look at that disconnect. So that's a difficult conversation you need to have internally. And what you say is, we need to look at what's necessary and expected for the recovery time frame. What do we need to have, and what do our users and leaders expect? Also, we got to look at those expectations and the ability to meet them. I was in a continuity planning session with a client about a week ago. Large organization, multiple sites, hundreds of employees, and their CFO thought that they could recover from a significant business interruption to the IT system in 30 minutes or less. So we started to talk about all the different things that are significant business disruptions and how it's not possible to do 30 minutes because they can't afford it. It's certainly possible to do if you buy enough redundant stuff, but then they changed that window and said, okay, well, what's really significant to us? Is it a day? Is it 2 days? So that's what you want to talk about with these continuity plans. So here's some goals we want to achieve when we create a continuity plan. We want to identify key processes. I hate to keep using medical practice, but I know several of you on the call are in medical, and a lot of you can relate to this. Checking in a patient and letting a patient leave and get a bill are critical processes. Patients arrive, you need to greet them, gather their data, verify their medications, put them through all kinds of questions. That check-in is critical. The checkout is critical. And of course, the delivery of the clinical services is critical. So look at those processes and determine what are the possible significant interruptions there. Next, identify critical underlying technology and services. If you're in a government organization and you're responsible for water, wastewater, lift stations, and those are connected with wide area network or cellular network, you're now reliant on those. Those have to be operational. What's our plan if they go down? Look at critical stakeholder relationships. In continuity planning, sometimes you're part of an ecosystem. At Vertex, we sell, install, and support Mitel phone systems as an example. Well, one of our key and critical stakeholders is our supplier, Mitel. If we had a significant supply chain interruption, we wouldn't be able to get parts that we need. Or HP Enterprise. We sell, install, and support HP Enterprise, hyperconverged storage, and so on. If HP Enterprise is significantly disrupted, their supply chain is significantly disrupted, we're not able to deliver products and services that we need. To look at alternative approaches, are there ways that you could use as what we call workarounds? Is there a way in your continuity plan to come up with a workaround, not as efficient, not as streamlined, not as pretty, but maybe you can get some work done? Next, establish a plan that can be readily and effectively activated. I'll give you an example from our own experience here at Vertex. Last week, we had a disruption of service, which was an outage of Cox, which is our primary telephone service. We use Cox. We have a fiber optic line providing our access to outside phone lines. Cox had a service disruption. That service disruption took down inbound phone calls. It still placed calls out. Nothing was coming in. Customers called our phone number. They were getting a telephone system error message from Cox. Cannot complete your call at this time. We knew it was an outage of inbound service. We activated our continuity plan, which for us was to flip our phones over to our cloud service, which is our backup service. So we have cloud phones at the help desk. We flip the phone service over to cloud phones using Cox's portal to port our main number, and we're able to get some service reactivated. Now, not every phone line was up. If you called my direct line, it would just go to the help desk. If you called Paul's direct line, it would just go to the help desk. But the calls were getting answered. A workaround, effective, easily activated, not full featured, but something. That's what continuity is about. And finally, provide real operational alternatives. Again, ways to get your stuff working, to get back into production, to get back to seeing patients, to get back to taking care of business that are different than what you use day to day. So those are the goals of continuity planning. This is an important slide. This is something I really want to focus attention on, because continuity planning falls into essentially 4 buckets: an ignore bucket, a normal procedures bucket, a planning bucket, and a change bucket. We look at 4 aspects of continuity planning: the probability of an incident, low or high, and the impact of an incident, low or high. We use that to determine what quadrant that incident falls in and then what actions we should take. So as an example, let's say on the impact level, low, on the probability, high. Impact low. One of my 12 service team members calls out sick. Okay, that's a high probability of happening sometime this year. Impact is low, though, because we can move his tickets to someone else. We can reschedule him. We can notify the client, maybe come out a different day or come out later. So those are normal procedures we follow every day. Another high probability but low impact, vacation. It's a planned event. We know it's coming. We schedule for it. That's a normal procedure. So we follow those normal procedures. Now, a low probability, low impact would be something like we have files, paper files that we have to maintain for compliance with state and federal law. Those paper files are stored in a storage facility off-site. We have digital copies here. We keep and we back those up as well digitally. Let's say the storage facility has a fire, everything gets burned to the ground, all our paper files are gone, but we have digital backups. It's low impact and low likelihood. We just ignore that. That is not part of our continuity plan. Now I want to flip the script and talk about the change something. This is really our number one priority. Continuity planning can uncover things in our business that we need to address immediately and not with the plan. I'm going to talk about those in a second. But if there are things in your business or your organization that are both highly likely to happen and are high impact to the business, that's not a planning, that's a change. And I'm going to cover those. The number 2 thing we want to focus on are things that are high impact, but lower probability. Lower probability events are the ones we want to plan for. If it's highly likely to happen and it's high impact, we got to make changes. So let me jump into that and tell you what I'm talking about. This is a slide from Gartner Group and Comdisco showing disruptions to IT and network operations statistical averages. And I've highlighted 4 areas: power outages, hardware failures, hurricanes, and floods. These 4 events account for essentially 2/3 of IT network operation disruptions, with power and hardware themselves almost 40% of those outages. So it's highly likely that your IT equipment will either have a power failure or a hardware failure in its life cycle. Not today, high likelihood, but during its production life cycle. That's highly likely. If you're in Florida, it's highly likely at some point in your career, at some point in your business, you're going to be negatively impacted by a hurricane. Not that your building is going to get blown away, but the hurricane will come through. It will cause, people to not be able to make it to work, power outages, significant business disruptions, high likelihood. Also highly likely in Florida, in coastal areas especially, or low-lying areas, a flood could cause a problem. So we want to focus on those 4 areas and talk about those as part of our high likelihood planning events. So earlier I alluded to the change something group, and I want to talk about this change something group. And these are high impact events that are also high probability events. These are things that are not to be planned for. These are things to change. The first, a loss of power, which is going to happen, to your critical systems with no battery backup in place or insufficient battery runtime. Let me quickly touch on that. Let's say you're Vertex Consulting. In our own building, we have IT assets. We have them in our data center here. We have batteries on them. Our battery runtime is 12-hour battery runtime, and everything is on it. And I can tell you last year, those batteries saved us multiple times during the year. But if the battery runtime is only 15 minutes and it's insufficient, we got to get bigger batteries. That's not a continuity thing. That's a fix-it thing. So look at your own power infrastructure for your critical systems. That includes Ethernet switches, routers, firewalls. A big miss we see a lot is the telephone company brings in IT equipment and puts it in your rack. That's their equipment, but it's using your power. It's not on a battery. We see that all the time. And without that, your phones are down. Or your internet is down. Or the internet and the phones are in a different closet on a little baby small battery backup, not a big one. You got to fix those things. That's not something you can plan for. It's got to be corrected. Next, the failure of critical system hardware, and you have no warranty or no spare, or sometimes both. So as an example, we did a continuity assessment for a client just about a month ago. We go on site. The customer has a bunch of servers. They're very old. Some of them are 9 years old. Most of them are 7 years old. All the warranties are expired. There are no warranties. They have no spare equipment of any kind and no surge protection either. So that's not a continuity thing. That's a fix-it thing. We said, you got to put battery backup on these. You have to put surge protection on these. And if you can't get a warranty on these servers and you want to have a continuity plan, you got to have a spare. That's a critical thing. Next, a failure of a hard drive with inadequate backup or incomplete backup. I've seen stats from big data centers, Google, AWS, Microsoft, IBM. They say that 40% of hard drives fail within a 10-year period. That's a big number. That means 4% potentially a year on average. First few years, probably not. What this means to IT folks, it's highly likely, and high impact that a hard drive is going to die. Make sure you have an adequate backup and a complete backup. If you don't have those things, you got to fix them. A ransomware or an encryption attack with no off-network backup, or again, inadequate or incomplete backup. It's highly likely that anyone in the sound of my voice at some time in their career is going to experience a ransomware or encryption attack. That's not low likelihood, it's high likelihood. Assume that's going to happen. If it did happen, Do you have off-network backup and a complete backup? And is it current? Does it meet your recovery point objective? If it does, you're good. If it does not, fix that, change that. You can't plan for things that are definitely going to happen and are high impact. You have to address them. And lastly, if you're relying on network critical links, telecom links, wide area links, MPLS links, fiber optic links, and you have to have those to do your business, and without those links, you're down completely, you have to have a backup link. In that earlier slide, I showed you the Gartner and Comdisco data that said that about 40% of outages were related to telecom and power. Well, have a backup link. It's cheap now. They're easy to get. Vertex has 3 internet pipes, a fiber from Ocala Electric, a fiber from Cox, and we've also got a broadband connection from a third carrier. We're getting ready to implement a 4th cellular backup, so we'll have 4 links. The 2 links we've had link outages, but our services continued. So link outages are common. You got to get those backup links. Let's move on to planning. These are the things that we can plan on, right? An extended loss of a major location, an extended loss of key personnel, an extended and significant interruption to your supply chain, an extended loss of critical infrastructure, or an extended loss of this key information. What I want to focus on for the planning phase is, what is an extended loss to you, your team, and your customers, and are they all in agreement? This can be a source of significant heartache. People start these planning processes. They do it kind of based on their own information, assumptions, and experience. Then it turns out that the leadership, the owners, whoever, says to them an extended loss is 8 hours. They couldn't tolerate 8 hours of lack of access to documents. Meanwhile, you're thinking 3 days. Or another example, I was in a medical practice just last week. Medical practice IT director and CFO both said they needed a recovery point objective of 1 day and a recovery time objective of 3 days. We designed a system for that, presented it to the doctors and the leadership, and they said, no, we were expecting a recovery point objective of 15 minutes and a recovery time objective of 4 hours. So you got to be in agreement on all those things. Let's give you some examples of some things you can do with your continuity plan and then get into some details. Let's talk about an extended loss of a major location. What can you do as a continuity plan? Ask yourself these questions. Is there any way we can restore operations at an alternate location? Can we have contracted space available? Can we collaborate with our suppliers or clients for space if needed? I mean, how great would this be? How great would it be if you were to say to me at Vertex, hey, Don, you do our IT work. I know you guys have a new office. It's got a lot of space in it. I know you've got that new conference room, that new training center, all coming online at the end of February. Is there any way that you could be our backup space and we could use your conference room for IT meetings or for just regular office staff in the event of a significant business disruption? And if so, could we get some kind of memorandum of understanding or get some paperwork to that effect so we've got some kind of backup plan? Sure. Or let's say you're an insurance company, insurance agency. I've been asked by multiple insurance agencies to look into that. I've also found there are contracted, rentable, portable storage and operational facilities. They'll literally tractor trailer in an office mobile home that's pre-wired, backup generator, all that stuff ready to go to run your business out of. Now, there is a significant expense to that. However, insurance can often cover that because of business interruption. So there are ways to plan continuity for space. Next, extended loss or unavailability of key people. That's something I want to focus on a bit. We're going to talk about how to do that in a minute. But do you have operational team members or financial team members? Do they have a second in command available? Is that second in command trained? And do they have documented procedures? So one of the things we're doing here internally at Vertex, and I've done this for the last several years, I meet regularly with the service manager, the finance manager, and we talk about how I can show them the things that kind of only I do, and they can show me some of the things that only they do. So even though my finance manager handles access to the credit card, handles our checks, handles bill pay, I still have logins to bank accounts. I can print checks. I know how to issue stuff out of QuickBooks. I know how to, contact American Express and get those bills paid. I don't really do that. She luckily handles all that for us, but I can do it as a backup. Our service manager, Paul and I, we share backup. I back him up on things. He backs me up on things. And we have documented some of those procedures. But I've also got Paul now training one of our help desk lead techs, Bill. Paul, I need you to train Bill on how to do what you do with project reviews, with sales kickoff meetings, with handoff meetings, so that Bill can be a second in command. So think about that in your team. Next, extended and significant interruption to critical supply chain goods and services. Can you coordinate backup sources of supply? So here at Vertex, we have a primary source of supply and we have backup sources. So for Hewlett Packard Enterprise, we can buy direct. We can also buy through wholesale distribution. And on wholesale distribution, we have warehouses all across the country we can pull from and from 3 different distributors. So even if those distributors are down, I've got a backup to the backup. So we've got multiple redundancies on sources of supply. Maybe you could look at your organization. You could have that. Also, can you have these agreements in place before an emergency strikes? If you're in medical and you need medical supplies and you can only get those medical supplies from one company, get a backup. They're not your primary, but get an agreement in place, buy a little bit from them, buy some spares from them, have a good relationship with them and have them in place just in case you need them. An extended loss or unavailability of critical infrastructure necessary for operation. Now you're going to need to look at your own critical infrastructure because that's going to vary by company and by industry. Maybe it's medical devices. Maybe it's a SCADA system for a government agency. Maybe critical systems are your customer relationship management software that's on site. Maybe it's a service ticketing system. Maybe it's invoice tracking or billing. Whatever it may be, it's going to vary by industry. But it could also include power, IT, cooling, air conditioning, which is critical in Florida, and vehicles. Let me hit on this cooling air conditioning for just a second. We have seen every year in the summertime 4 or 5 outages of people we know who don't have any kind of backup cooling plan. What happens is there's a significant event that causes the temperature to rise in the server room. The server AC unit goes down. And what happens when that server AC unit goes down is all those servers throw off all that heat. It gets hotter and hotter and hotter, and they literally shut down because it's too hot in the data center. You need to have if you have a data center and it's on site and you got servers, you need to make sure you've got adequate ventilation. Now, not to be silly, but in all seriousness, our backup cooling plan is fans. And we literally have box fans, those ones you buy at Home Depot or Walmart that you plug in. It's a box type fan. And we've had our AC unit in our server closet go bad. In the new building we're almost moved into, we have dual redundant ACs on different power feeds, on different power circuits, on different sides of the data center so that we cannot have that problem, but we'll still have those box fans. What happens? AC goes out, open the door, put the fans in, get the air flowing through, you've got something. If you look at those things, maybe you can have backup power. The backup power can be batteries. It could also be generators. If you don't own a generator, you can buy access to an emergency generator. There's multiple companies in every city that do this. You tell them, I need contracted emergency generator service. They'll come out, measure how much power you need. They'll install a quick disconnect. They'll install a generator link, but you don't have to buy the generator. What happens is in the event of a significant power outage, they have a service level agreement with you and they guarantee within 2 or 4 hours or 8 hours or whatever the contract says, they'll bring out a generator on a trailer in the parking lot, connect it to your building, power the whole building, and you only pay for it when you're using it. It's like an insurance policy though. So you pay them a monthly retainer, you pay them a monthly service fee. And then if the emergency kicks in, they bring it on site, you've got backup power, and then hopefully you don't have a disastrous effect and maybe you can use some insurance to offset the cost as well. Backup IT resources. This could be spare equipment. This could be a spare Ethernet switch. It could be a spare Wi-Fi access point. It could be a spare firewall, or it could be access to someone who has those spares. Now, here at Vertex, we have tons of spares. We keep spares for most of our clients. A lot of our clients use the same stuff, so it's easier for us to have those spares. But if you're big enough and you've got enough resources, you might want to have your own spares yourself. Lease vehicles. If you use company vehicles as a significant part of your business, organizational vehicles as a significant part of your business, you can contract with all the big guys, Hertz, Avis, Enterprise, so that they have vehicles for you when needed within a certain period of time. You go to Enterprise, rent a car, and you say, all right, I need the access to 4 vans in the event of emergency, and I need access to them within 1 business day. What's it going to cost to get me that? And they will tell you, well, here's what we can do for you. We can give you access to those 4 vans, and within 1 business day, I need you to pay me X dollars per month forever. And then if you use the vans, you pay for usage on top of that. So that is there for business continuity. Extended loss or unavailability of key information, vital documents, including electronic data systems or IT. Example, a ransomware attack could lead to loss of access to critical financial systems, payroll, checking, important business documents. This is not a scare tactic. I'm not trying to say this to use hyperbole, but I'll give you a real life story. Briefly, a client of ours that we provide my telephone system to, a large national contractor that does mechanical contractor work. They have dozens of sites all over the country, but we don't handle their IT. They had internal IT. They called us on a Monday. They've been down for 4 days straight due to a ransomware attack. The entire data center, all their backups encrypted, all their offsite backups encrypted. Can't get access to anything at all. The ransom that was being requested was around $400,000 in Bitcoin. The customer made the decision not to pay the ransom and to rebuild from scratch. When I say rebuild from scratch, what I mean is they asked us to set up Microsoft Azure Active Directory and Office 365, and they were literally starting with nothing. Now, luckily, they did find a USB attached hard drive that had some critical documents on it from a year ago, but during this outage, they lost access to payroll. They couldn't write checks. They couldn't pay suppliers. It was a real nightmare. So you might want to look at how do you have offline or off-net backup copies of this critical information. And some of this could be low tech. In the continuity plan, you could say, hey, for the ultra critical systems or online systems, we're also going to take, an encrypted USB drive. We're going to store credentials, access information, process, procedure, instruction. We're going to store all that in an offline encrypted USB drive or put it in a safe deposit box. Or, Don's going to take it to his house and put it in a fireproof safe. So you've got those off-net information, those offline information. Maybe, and I've seen this in some organizations, they have lots and lots of websites they access where you require credentials. You're storing those credentials maybe in LastPass or cache them in the browser. Who knows where you're keeping it? Piece of paper in the desk. Have copies of all those because you're going to need all those logins, because in the event of a ransomware attack, your email could be down potentially for days. What are you going to do if your email's down? You can't reset passwords. You're going to need those passwords, so have those offline as well. So let's get into the meat of this, and let's talk about a continuity of management plan and what it looks like. And I'll share with everybody on this call and everyone who registered all these documents digitally so you can fill them in. I'm going to give you some examples here on the webinar. Continuity management. You can assume that not every key person will be readily available or physically at the facility after an emergency. Hurricane blows through. There's going to be trees down. There's going to be power down. Some employees' houses are going to be in worse shape than others. Some people are going to be stuck in their neighborhood because of trees or because of down power lines. Not everybody's going to be able to make it into the building or even have cell phone service potentially. So you got to ensure that recovery decisions can be made without undue delay. So here's some things you can do. Assure a chain of command and maintain lines of succession for key personnel. This worksheet helps you do that. You have a policy statement about continuity management. The policy statement could be as simple as, Vertex Consulting's policy for continuity management is that continuity decisions are going to be made by Don Gulling. If he's unavailable, the second in command is Paul Violet. If Paul's unavailable, the next person will make decisions is Tangerine Winters. And here's all their contact information. Under contact information, you are going to track addresses Why? In a hurricane situation, you may need to be able to look at a map or hear information or weather reports or local news reports about what neighborhoods are affected. You might not be able to reach them on the cell or email. You're also going to have telephone numbers, multiple numbers typically. In our business, we have, as creepy as it sounds, they've got my phone number. They have my wife's cell phone number. Our home has a landline they have the number of. And I have a backup cell phone that I keep that has on a different carrier that it has a number on. They got 4 numbers to reach me on. Paul and every other key leader, we have their cell phone, their home phone if they have one, and their spouse's phone, so we can contact any of them if need be. This is something I would gather quickly. I find that most businesses don't have complete information and contact details on all the team, and not even on the leadership team, and they haven't thought about these emergency numbers. What is an emergency number? It could be the wife's phone. It could be a landline. It could be the neighbor's phone. So think about that. Fill this in. This will be part of your continuity management plan. This is a critical one, a staff notification plan. In a significant business disruption, staff should be regularly updated on the operational status, including whether or not they should report to work, what the conditions are like, alternate work sites, and so on. I'm going to talk about more tips at the end, but one key tip, you can use your voicemail system or voicemail groups for this. You could also set up a crisis voicemail box, give everyone instructions on how to check it, which is kind of a low-tech way of doing it. Or I've even had people say they want to have a backup of a backup. They set up a Google Voice account that has voicemail on it. They give instructions to everybody. They have a shared password. They don't put anything confidential in there, but they know if our entire phone system is down, we're going to be able to call this Google Voice, update the mailbox. Everybody can listen to those messages. So I'm going to send you this checklist. You'll have it. It'll have the name of everyone, their title, all their contact information, home, office phones, alternate phones, wife's phone, whatever you want to put in there, any special needs. And also they got special abilities, and then a local emergency contact and an out-of-state emergency contact. Why is this important? Well, you could be in a bad position. One of your staff people could be injured in a business disruption. Who do you contact locally? Or you could be in a situation where you can't reach them at all. Do they have family out of state? Maybe they're Facebook friends with them. Who knows? That could be part of your out-of-state emergency contact plan. Key business contacts. This is something that I find almost no one has kind of updated and well managed. We're talking about suppliers, vendors, backup suppliers and vendors, and key customers and key contacts that you need in your business. In a significant business disruption, on that second slide where I showed Winston Churchill with the victory sign, I talked about the fact that we need to look at these crises as an opportunity. If your continuity plan is good, and if you put it into a place effectively, and there is a significant business disruption, and you're able to communicate to your suppliers, your vendors, your clients, everyone you're involved with, what's going on, what your access is like, what they should expect from you, I can tell you that's going to raise their confidence in you. That's going to make them feel like you have your act together, and that's going to increase the rapport you build with them and make a deeper, tighter relationship. So I'd say this is vital. Key contacts can include people like your accountant, your bank. You might use, if you're medical, you might use a billing service. If you rent your building, a building owner or building manager, your insurance agent, the insurance company, your internet service provider. If you have a payroll company, how to get them, public works department, telephone companies, utilities companies. Have all that there for yourself so you have access to it. Have all this information available in the continuity plan and have notes so it can be carried out not only by the leadership, but by their backup people as well. Financial continuity. Consider financial continuity not only for your business but also for your staff. Will you be able to write payroll during a prolonged outage? Will you be able to continue operations without access to accounting software or issue checks to suppliers? If you're in a situation like that customer had the ransomware attack and had to start from scratch, lost all their accounting data, they had to request, copies of bills from all their suppliers. They lost suppliers' phone numbers and emails. I mean, it was a complete nightmare. They're still working through it. Don't find yourself in that position. Also, look at your bank's financial needs. Who has access to your checking account? I'll tell you here at Vertex, I'm the only one who can sign checks. I've always had it that way. It's just something I've done. However, my wife has a financial power of attorney that she's able to use if I'm either temporarily or permanently disabled or in the event of my untimely death. So she can exercise the power of attorney and she can sign checks with power of attorney. She can go down to the bank, give them the power of attorney, do a check card. She can sign all the Vertex checks. She's my backup. This year I've decided I'm going to have a second backup. I'm going to use my CPA. I've talked to my CPA about it. I'm going to get them the power of attorney for financial matters to let them sign checks for me. Cash. Do you need cash, and how much cash do you need, and how is it going to be used? Who's going to manage it? Who can utilize it? Look at your cash. Do you keep enough cash on hand to pay for emergency services? Credit cards. Not only a company credit card, do you have a backup card? I do. Amex is my primary. I have a Visa backup. Those are all company cards. I also have additional authorized credit card users. I'm a credit card user. Tangerine, my finance manager, is. Paul's a credit card user. John Childers, my VP, is a credit card user. So they can have access to them. And they all have access to those accounts as well. Finally, on this checklist, which I'll send you, human resources. How's payroll going to be handled? If you've got an online payroll service, great. Will you have login credentials? Does it use multi-factor authentication? What if the person who does payroll is incapacitated or their internet is down, they can't make it to work? Do you have a backup who has a multi-factor authentication? Can they access those tools? For your financial planning, for your employees, to let them know what's going on. Will they be able to use sick or vacation time in an unrestricted way, or are you going to limit it? Let's say it's a hurricane. It's Florida. We all know it's coming. The weather tells us we've got, 3 days till it strikes, 2 days till it strikes. It's hitting tomorrow. And then all of a sudden we got staff who say, well, I can't make it in. I'm going to use my, vacation days for the next 2 weeks. So I'm going to stay home and clean up branches and take care of my wife and kids. Well, do you really want to let them use all their vacation? It's coming. Maybe you have a policy that says in the event of a hurricane, we're going to allow you to use sick time or vacation time for up to 3 business days without prior approval. Anything beyond 3 business days or 3 days of vacation or PTO is going to require manager approval, because you don't want someone to use this as an opportunity to just not show up for a week or two because they have the vacation time. Doesn't apply as much in Florida, but let's say you have operations in other states. Are there union considerations? Unions in New York, New Jersey, California, they have a lot of rules and regulations you got to comply with, so be wary of that. And finally, have your employees made aware of your policies that will be in place during a disruption? Do they know what's going to happen? And are they aware of what to expect in terms of payroll, vacation, sick time, and so on? Next, alternate or temporary business location plan. So earlier I talked about, contacting Vertex, contacting suppliers, contacting your friends and asking them, could you use space at their warehouse, space in their office, rental space as a temporary business location? Maybe there's a fire, a flood, the sprinkler system goes down. This is when it happened to a client of ours. A semi truck slammed into their building. They were right off the major highway. A driver unfortunately had a heart attack, died while in the cabin of the truck. Truck careens off the road, slams into their building, right into the wall where all their telephone and power is, and knocks down a power pole, power to the building, all the telephone, it's all down. The building was essentially unusable until they got emergency service up, restored, repaired. It took 3 days. Nobody could do anything. Some people went and worked from home, but some people couldn't do anything. So can you get that alternate location in place? Maybe if you're in a business park, is there vacant space? If you're a tenant of a large strip mall, maybe there's open bays there. Maybe you could use that. So whatever you can do, look at prearrangements, look at alternate business locations, maybe a second alternate location. Who are the points of contact for those? And does that site have, how many staff can it hold? Are supplies pre-staged? How long would it take to get it up and running? Maybe you'd only use it if you're down for 3 days or more, but is this available to you? How long could you stay there? Maybe Don says you can use his conference room. I'll let you use it for up to a week. You can't have it forever, but you can use it for a while. Are there any hazards in the area? Maybe we're in a place that's low-lying, flood issues and so on, and then any notes. So this alternate or temporary business plan can really help you if you need to relocate. So here's some ideas for consideration in terms of continuity processes. To maintain your communication readiness, have employees review and update their contact information for you at least every 6 months. Now we do it every 30 days. Tangerine, our finance manager, and she has a backup, which is Brittany DePhilly. Not only do we maintain all of our staff information, we've got all the family info. So I've got, let's give you an example of Steve Hall or Brian Picard. Their cell phone, their home address, their wife's cell phone, if they have a backup personal email, if their wife has a backup personal email, we have their kids' names and their kids' ages. We know what schools they go to. All that's in a business contact information sheet. And every month we update that stuff. Also think about maybe using the free services, Yahoo, Gmail, Hotmail, etc., to enable people to contact the company regarding their status. Maybe you could set up a Gmail address as an alias for the company that's, vertexemergency@gmail.com, which we all know how to check. And we can use that as kind of a post-it board and put messages in there. If everything was down, we could use that. Make sure everybody knows how to get to it, of course. We have a little wallet card. We print the instructions. We have a voicemail box we share and an email box we share that's all off net. And we laminate it and we put it in a card and we give it to everybody. We've also emailed it to everybody and put it on their phone so everybody has it in multiple places. Customers. You got to look after your customers in the event of a disaster. Customers may be upset. They may not understand. They're not in Florida. They don't get what hurricanes can do. They don't understand, hey, trucks are down. We can't get UPS. We can't get FedEx. We have no power. We have no water. Employees, can't get their kids to school. It's kind of a meltdown situation. We need 3 days to recover. They might not get that. But if you communicate to them and set expectations and let them know what's going on, things will be better. So think about, are there ways for you to tell them, hey, here's, alternative options. Here's changes in delivery schedules. Here's rescheduling of medical appointments. Here's what to expect next. Make sure you plan for that. Think of ways to communicate with clients after the disaster, during it, including things like direct telephone calls to your number one key people, a designated phone number that they can call with a recording. A lot of our government customers are great at this. They'll set up an emergency mailbox and an emergency auto attendant for hurricane mode. And when citizens call into the government, if it's shut down because of the hurricane, they'll have pre-recorded messaging. Hey, due to the current weather emergency, our operations are temporarily disrupted. If this is emergency, hang up and dial 911 or give them other information. Here's what to expect. Here's what shelters are open and so on, and keep that up to date. You can also look at using text message. We have a text blasting service that you can subscribe to very cheaply and blast out text messages to millions of people. Email, of course, some untraditional ones, but they might work. Twitter, Facebook. A lot of customers are using that now. And part of your disaster recovery plan could say, we're going to post updates on Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn every 4 hours. Here's our channel so you can follow us. Put it right on your website. If you're a big business, you've got budget, maybe you use radio, television. If it's a long-term outage, maybe you use the newspaper. That's a little less common now, but it's a possibility. Last couple of things. Maintain an up-to-date copy of critical online account names, login codes, and passwords. We find that in every business we go to, there are separate areas, operations, finance, management, leadership, wherever, and they keep, those individual people, they keep access to this information. Payroll, sometimes it's just one person that has access to it. Checking, sometimes it's just one person that has access to it. Other critical online information management systems, sometimes it's one person. I'd recommend using a system like LastPass or similar, where you can save all those credentials in LastPass. The finance manager has her LastPass account. Don, I have my LastPass account. Paul has his LastPass account. I keep all my credentials in there. However, I give Paul and Tangerine access to my LastPass account. That way, in the event of my disability or untimely death, they could log into my LastPass account as me and get access to all those sites. Something to consider. Also consider this one. We like this one. We can do it with a Mitel phone system or a free conferencing service. Think about setup of a crisis bridge. So a crisis bridge is a conference bridge with a phone number that people can dial into, where the leadership team will communicate pertinent updates on an ongoing basis throughout the disaster. You could say something like, hey, we're going to set up this crisis bridge, and every hour on the hour or at every half-hour interval, we're going to have leadership call in and give updates. Any staff member with a question can dial in. Or maybe it's, hey, we're doing it at 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. Call in at 10 a.m. or 2 p.m. We're going to have pertinent updates for team about the location of the business, what to expect, what comes next, all right there in the crisis bridge. A freebie, freeconferencecall.com. You could set up a conference bridge on there, no charge, give it to leaders and staff, and they can have live discussion during that outage. Even if your phone system is down, you can still use freeconferencecall.com, or there's other services like that. Lastly on this slide, consider using non-email communication with key leaders and staff as a continuity system. Email frequently goes down in these events. What I would say, you might want to consider alternate issues like WhatsApp, Facebook Messenger, or a private LinkedIn group. Now, this one I really, really like. You can set up a LinkedIn group for free at no charge. All of your key leaders can join the group. And when they join that group, it'll notify the one who set it up and ask, do they have permission to join? You accept them. So you only have your staff in that group and no one else can see it. Then if all the emails down, the whole world's coming, falling apart, you can go to that LinkedIn page, post news, updates, information, and even have discussion threads, and it's all private and it's all free, and it doesn't need your email system. You could even do it from the public library. So that's a good one. WhatsApp is very powerful. I started using it last year. WhatsApp is encrypted. WhatsApp is secure. WhatsApp has distribution lists. You can access it from telephones. You can access it from iOS devices. You can access it from, the public library, any computer. So that's another one to consider as an alternative to voice and email communication in an emergency. So wrapping up, here's some things you need to do. Number one, you need to set aside a time to meet with the key team members, go through the planning checklist that we'll send you, identify risks, rank the probability and the impact. If the probability and impact are both high, consider making a change right now. You can't plan for that. If the probability is low and the impact is high, that's when you make the plan. That's continuity planning. For business leadership continuity, consider the low probability but high impact of an owner, a manager, or a key employee and their disability or death. This just happened to a client of mine that their CEO had a stroke. Initially, it was thought it was going to be a no big deal. He was going to be back on his feet in a couple of days. Maybe some speech therapy, they said. 2 days later, it was worse. Now he can't type. He can't use the cell phone. He's unable to read effectively. He's having cognitive issues, all because of that stroke. It's been 2 weeks now. He's having difficulty communicating. He can't write. His speech is not well. And they don't have access to sign checks. They don't have access to online banking. They can't do payroll approvals without him. So they're totally dependent on him, and none of this is in place. Look at your own business. If it's private business, do you need power of attorney documents? Who do you give them to? Consult if you have a legal team, consult them. There's also some LegalZoom.com and some free legal services. Do you need documented information that only they have? Maybe they want to give it to a spouse, and only in a significant disability, they hand you the envelope or the encrypted USB key with all the information on it, or the LastPass account with all the information on it. Lastly here, do you need to cross-train team members? That can take time. Put a training plan together, have a backup for these key people, cross-train those team members. And then review that plan every 6 months. Once a year is not enough. I'd recommend quarterly. 6 months is kind of a minimum for me. And communicate the plan to the entire team so they're assured they know that you have a plan. A couple of last resources for you. I like these. This is where I get a lot of the documents that we use. Ready.gov. You can just go to ready.gov and dig a little deeper. You'll see a business link, implementation of continuity. They've got tons of continuity plans, plan examples, free resources. It's a great site. So I'd recommend using that. Also, Open for Business website. This is a great, great site. Go to disastersafety.org. So disastersafety.org is the gateway to all these sites. But then you'll find this IBHS, and I'll send you this link, business protection, open for business, easy business continuity. The easy business continuity is where I get most of these checklists from. They're very, very easy to use and very helpful. I've been monitoring the questions and I've been monitoring the chat. I've replied to a couple. If you have any other ones, I'm glad to stick around. That's all the content for the continuity webinar for today. Hopefully you found a couple of good ideas that you can implement in your business. Hopefully this will get a conversation started in your business about business continuity, understanding what continuity is, what it's not, and how to have a plan.